What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing a triple buffed Serpent team all running the move Wrap, which I think is probably the most underrated move change this season, but there aren't many Pokemon that really benefit from it. But as you're going to see in these battles, it's kind of busted right now. Now, I didn't really think about this at the time when putting the team together, but this is basically just a more consistent version of the Weather Trio that I showcased in yesterday's video, with a Dragon-type Pokemon in the lead, a Waterfall user as the safe swap, and a Ground-type Pokemon in the back, so that's kind of a cool comparison to make. Now, realistically, there is a long list of Ground-type Pokemon they should probably run ahead of Sandaconda, but their teams seem to work really well together, and I'm going to be showcasing my final 3 sets with the team, where I went 14-1 and gained just under 200 elo. So with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. Outside of Energy Ball, which move update do you think has had the biggest impact on this season's meta? Let me know in the comment section down below, and with that being said, let's get into the battles now. So go into the first battle, and by the way, these battles will actually be in order, which is something that I don't usually do on the channel, because usually the teams that I run aren't necessarily good enough for me to showcase all of the battles for the team, but we're going to see a very rare Scorching Sands Kanto Ninetales. I was like, Dragonair, you completely wall this Pokemon. What could go wrong here? But of course, we run into one that's running Scorching Sands. At least I'm not a fire type in the lead where I just get completely one-shot. But anyways, because we're able to debuff them with a Wrap, honestly, these Waterfalls from Shadow Milotic are absolutely chunking. We only have to settle for an Aqua Tail, and that gets the KO. They're going to come in with their final Pokemon, which is going to be a Credilli, but this is fine with me. We've got quite a lot of energy here, so we can fire for the Aqua Tail, we're able to grab a shield, and we're able to reach yet another Aqua Tail before the opponent reaches their first charge move. They're actually going to double shield Credilli. They swap back into the Shadow Kanto Ninetales. So at this point, I'm just going to look to shield here. They go for a Weather Ball. I'm now going to swap back into my Shadow Dragonair, commit to the full farm down. We can now fire for the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to hit for neutral damage. It is non-stab, and unfortunately, it won't quite put them into range where another Aqua Tail from my Milotic will get the knockout. However, Sandaconda is going to resist the acid damage, so despite the fact that Grass Knot is going to hit for huge damage, it's not going to put me into range where they can farm me down, so they're forced to throw more energy, and Milotic does have a charge move loaded, so we're going to come back in, straight away click on the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail takes out the Credilli, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG so far there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Gastrodon in the lead. By the way, I am still a little bit ill, so again, the commentary on these battles might not be quite as high energy as usual, just because when I do start to really go in, then that's when my throat starts to get a bit sore, and I might start coughing a lot. But either way, we're going to swap into Milotic, trying to go for a snipe with the Waterfall, but unfortunately, they barely hang on with 1 HP and a Dream. They're now going to come in with Morpeko, and of course, not a great matchup for me, but Morpeko, very glassy. I'm going to fire for Wrap. Wrap is going to be shielded, and now they will throw a charge move. They don't commit to the full farm down. Psychic Fangs is obviously going to get the knockout from that range, but I can come in with the Sandaconda, dealing huge damage after debuffing their defense. They will reach an Aura Wheel, but we can now just shield that up. Their final Pokemon gonna be Greninja, and at this point, I feel like this game is already wrapped up. Pardon the pun as we fire off the Wrap, but at this point, the opponent is going to fire off some energy. We just know shield here. If they full send the Hydro Cannon, we can now come back in with the Shadow Dragonair. They will not reach back-to-back charge moves. I think I'm only 1 Dragon Breath away from a Wrap. Honestly, Aqua Tail probably gets the knockout after the debuff, but Wrap, just to play it safe, will be taking out the Greninja, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle, and this is really the big issue for this team. Abomasnow completely core breaks the entire team. So we swap out straight away into Milotic. The opponent weirdly throws on very strange timing, which gives me a full Waterfall in for free. And the fact that they're not swapping out here means that maybe Milotic is quite strong into their backline. However, that doesn't really help me here, because I'm not going to see the backline with Milotic, because the opponent is going to, once again, not throw on the best timing, but they end up baiting here. And that is now going to allow them, even with that poor timing on both charge moves, they can still just barely reach an Energy Ball, and Energy Ball is going to get the KO. Now, we're going to come in with the Shadow Dragonair, but unfortunately, they reach another Weather Ball here, and Abomasnow is absolutely decimating my team right now. We come in with the Sandaconda, and yes, it looks like they are quite weak to the Milotic in the back. Very weak to Milotic in actual fact. So, potentially, maybe I should have tried to swap out there, save the Milotic, but we go for the Earth Power. That gets the knockout. We should live a Bone Club here. However, I don't think Sandaconda can deal quite enough damage. With this next Earth Power, it's going to be close, but it doesn't get the KO, so they Mud Slap farm me down, and that is going to be the only loss that we get in this video. But GG's to opponent there. Of course, if you do see a lot of Abomasnow, then this team would be something that is really difficult to run. But I only saw one of them, so it's not so bad for me. But either way, we're going to fire an Octail here, and this is a matchup where I should be able to grab a shield advantage if the opponent really wants switch advantage, which I think is actually fine with me. So I'm just going to no shield here. We throw on CMP, so that's fine. However, Nightshade, not really going to deal enough damage there. They do get quite a bit of energy as they farm me down, but they were always going to reach a charge move up against my Dragonair anyways, so I guess it doesn't make a huge difference. But now we can come in, we can go for that Dragon Breath farm down, and we leave with an Aquatail loaded. We're going to swap out straight away, and we're going to see a Shadow for Alligator in the back. But of course, you guys are probably familiar with this, with Mud Slappers, especially a Mud Slapper this season that can go for a debuff with Wrap, that you can just 2-shield and farm down a Shadow for Alligator, and unfortunately for the opponent, there's just not much they can do here. So this is a bit of a degen play, but we do of course have a really bad lead matchup, so we need to flip that matchup. We come out with the Earth Power loaded. I honestly can't remember how much energy they've got, but an Earth Power plus the Aquatail Snipe from the Shadow Dragonair should be enough damage to take out the Tinkaton, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's opponent there into the next battle. I'm going to see Shadow Dusknoir in the lead. So, we're going to stay in this lead matchup as I can outpace them to a single Aquatail before they reach a potential Shadow Punch. So, Aquatail is going to be no-shielded by the opponent. So, I'm going to swap out into my Milotic. If they're smart, they should go for Dynamic Punch. But the opponent going to go for a Shadow Punch instead before swapping out into Shadow Greninja. Now, this might seem like a strange play, but I'm actually going to shield here because I want this Wrap, well, either to land or to debuff their defense. The opponent got a no-shield. That does insane damage there, puts them into farm down range, and their final Pokemon is a Shadow Conkeldurr. So, of course, I'm going to fire off the Aquatail as I will not reach another Wrap, but we can now come in, apply some decent fast move pressure with my Sandaconda. They swap out there. I don't know what they were trying to do because I did not have the energy for a charge move, whereas now we can shield the Brutal Swing. I can now fire off a Wrap, and of course, this is going to debuff them. They should have the energy for another Brutal Swing, but they're going to be forced to throw some energy into my Dragonair, and as a result, we can come back in with the Sandaconda. One Mud Slap doesn't quite get the KO, but a second one does get that farm down, and I'm able to take that game. We also get a shiny Solgaleo, which is really cool because I've not even bothered raiding this thing, so that is awesome to see. We are now going to see Shadow Dragonair into shiny Shadow Marowak. So battle of the shiny shadows. Once again, I will outpace them. They do actually make a nice catch there. Honestly, my reaction's pretty slow on that one, but we can also look to make a catch of our own, and we're able to swap out. Have we caught a Drill Peck here? The answer, yes, we have, which means, of course, that's not super effective, but also with the chip damage from Dragonair, we put them into Mud Slap farm down range. Now, honestly, I expect to grab a shield from the opponent, so I go for Wrap, but they actually no shield there. Honestly, it doesn't make a huge difference because I can just come in and farm down with either Pokemon anyways and get a slight energy advantage into whatever their final Pokemon is, but it's going to be a Licky Licky, so they swap out immediately, and this will allow them to outpace me and throw a Body Slam straight away. However, of course, Body Slam not going to deal too much damage into my Milotic, even in its Shadow form. It's got a decent amount of bulk here, but I will look to respect the next one because my Dragonair is relatively low. So at this point, we can fire off the Aquatail. Aquatail should be grabbing the final shield as it is stab damage here from the Milotic, but we can now come in with the Dragonair. Honestly, should have gone for Wrap because Aquatail doesn't quite get the KO there, but it doesn't really matter at this point. The opponent gonna swap back into their Shadow Kanto Marowak, but we can just Dragon Breath, farm them all the way down. One more Dragon Breath takes out Licky Licky, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's swap on there into the next battle. I'm going to see another Kanto Ninetales in the lead. However, this time around, they do swap out, so presumably they do have the standard moveset with Energible as their coverage. We're going to chip with a Wrap and then swap out into Sandaconda, where, of course, I'm resisting the fast move pressure. The opponent, they can fire off a Shadow Ball, and they can actually outpace to a Body Slam as well. However, this isn't going to do enough damage to put me into farm down range, and instead, Sandaconda is the one able to get the farm down. Now, I do kind of just blind throw an Earth Power. I wait to see what comes in. It's going to be a Azumarill. Earth Power doesn't deal too much damage, but then again, neither would a Wrap. Now, they actually swap back into their Kanto Ninetales. This is fine with me, because we can just stay in, fire off the Aquatail. Aquatail is going to grab a shield, and now we can swap into our Dragonair. Of course, Dragonair not going to have a super comfortable matchup up against the Azumarill, so I really don't mind fully sacrificing it here, as we will force them to throw some energy. However, that second Weather Ball is going to put me into a very aggressive farm down range for the opponent to come out with a ton of energy, but they don't throw straight away. Now, I think that is probably a misplay, because I feel like their win condition is getting a debuff with an energy ball, and then potentially that allows them to get the knockout with a Play Rough. Whereas now, I do shield, they went for an Ice Beam bait, which I thought was really surprising, but it doesn't really matter because I've debuffed them now. Even an Aqua Tail, which is resisted damage, will get the knockout, and now, of course, we've still got a shield in play. They're not going to reach back-to-back charge moves. They do bait, but it doesn't make a difference. We get the Waterfall farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see Feraligatr in the lead. So this is going to be a slightly positive matchup for me. However, of course, I do expect them to have Ice Beam, and even if they've got Crunch for coverage, it's still going to do a lot of damage. We fire off the Wrap, I then swap out, and here I feel like they likely bait me with a Hydro Cannon anyways, but that's still resisted up against my Milotic, so I really don't mind. I'm going to no-shield once again, as again, this is just going to be another Hydro Cannon. It is going to get me very low, so I'm just going to farm up to back-to-back Aqua Tails before throwing. I don't expect them to shield this, so this should be fine, and I do have another Aqua Tail loaded. I thought maybe my Milotic would be strong into their backline since they didn't swap out, but actually they had a pretty good answer the whole time in the form of Altaria. Now at this point, I'm going to come in, I'm going to fire off the Wrap straight away, debuff their defense, and now I'm swapping into Sandaconda. Maybe I could have stayed in just because I could deal a lot more Dragon Breath damage now that I debuffed them, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Clodsire, and that should be game over. All I need to do is make sure I come out of this matchup with a lot of energy, and I should be looking fine. So I am going to full send the Earth Power. Maybe could have gone for a Wrap there, but I go for the Undercharge. It doesn't quite KO, so I come out with a Wrap loaded. However, I don't know if that is quite enough energy here. As we go for the Wrap, Wrap is going to debuff their defense, but we're never Mudslap farming them down, and they do reach another charge move here. You can see I was trying to make the catch. I was out by one turn, but it doesn't matter in the end as we don't faint. We can come in, snipe with the Dragon Breath damage from Dragonair, and I'm able to take that game. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Kanto Marowak in the lead. This time, it's not Shadow, it's also not Shiny, but it's going to be the same play here on my end, as I'm going to go straight for the Aqua Tail. The opponent does not make the catch, but they can tank it, because, of course, they are non-Shadow. So we're going to come in with the Milotic. I'm going to swap out. I'm able to snipe with a Waterfall there, get them very low. I think I might just barely live an Aqua Jet here, so I no shield, but unfortunately that does get the knockout. And of course, Sandaconda has a terrible time up against the Swanna, so I'm forced to come back in with my Shadow Dragonair. I'm going to go for a Wrap here because I do expect them to shield, and maybe I could have reached back-to-back charge moves here, but I feel like they would have just double shield anyways, so whereas now we can come in, I can double shield and commit to a Mudslap farm down. The opponent actually swaps back into Marowak there. Honestly, don't understand that play whatsoever, and their final Pokemon is a shiny Lucario. So I'm full sending Earth Power grabs the final shield, and here the opponent is going to go for a bit of a strange play, but it does make sense. They full send a close combat, trying to give me less farm, but we still get that Mudslap farm down with the same amount of Mudslaps anyways, which means we're one away. We barely outpace them to the Wrap, which takes out the Swanna, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Galarian Weezing in the lead. So, of course, not a great matchup for me whatsoever, and also not a great swap for me either. However, this is where you're going to see Wrap is just absolutely busted. Wrap does decent damage, it drops their defense, and the opponent is now going to be outpaced here because they have to full send a Frenzy Plant unless they're running like Thunder Punch as coverage. But either way, I'm now going to fire for the Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail should be threatening a shield, and if I really want to, I can just double shield here, commit to the Waterfall farm down, and I'm going to flip this matchup up against the Chestnut, which means I can align my Sandaconda to their Galarian Weezing. So here, we're going to fire off the Wrap. We've already seen it does insane damage to a Shadow Greninja. They're going to throw straight away, which means I'm actually just going to come in with my Sandaconda, expecting them to swap out straight away into their Weezing, and they do exactly that. Now here, I'm able to swap out, and I believe I've just got an overheat. Now, this is crazy because I don't think they even throw on, like, as soon as they got there. I think they did overfarm by one, but Sludge now gets the knockout, but they're debuffed. We can come in, Mudslap, farm down the Weezing. We can Mudslap, farm down Greninja as well, and I'm able to take that game. So there we go, 5-0 in that set. Very nice with the Stardust count there because, of course, we do have all 3 leagues available. And whenever the Open Master League is available, we do get extra Stardust. So very nice there. Into the next battle, we are going to see a Tentacruel in the lead. We fire off the Wrap, which does decent damage. I think this might just be a Scald, so I'm going to no shield, and it is the Scald. However, it does a lot of damage. They also drop my attack stat, which means I couldn't commit to a farm down. Instead, I sniped them with my Lotic, and again, we're going to see another Altaria. So you would think that this isn't a great matchup since I'm not on Dragon Tail. Instead, Waterfall is resisted, but we've already seen after a single debuff with that Wrap, we honestly deal quite a lot of damage here. So at this point, I'm now going to look to overfarm. I'm going to fire off the Wrap just before they do reach another charge move. Wrap is going to be shielded, and then I go for a CMP tie sack swap. So we're able to get off the Aquatail. Aquatail is going to connect. It doesn't deal too much damage, but they were double debuffed, and also we force all of their energy. So that is absolutely huge for me. I've also put them into range where I can Mudslap farm down with the Sandaconda. Their final Pokemon going to be a Shadow Drapion, and this is game over. Drapion, of course, does have Aquatail full coverage, but they're never farming me down. We can go for the Wrap. Wrap should be grabbing the final shield from the opponent. It will make the farm down ever so slightly easier. I think actually it doesn't make a difference in terms of the number of Mudslaps I need, but either way, we swap back into my Lotic. Waterfall is resisted, but we get the farm down up against the Altaria, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we see Jumpluff in the lead. Now, Jumpluff is a pretty tricky Pokemon for me to deal with, especially if it is up against my backline. Now, I don't know why, but I had a lot of trouble with throwing Wraps on good timing up against Jumpluff. I tried to throw one after I reached the Wrap, but for some reason, I seem to always throw an alignment. But the opponent going to make my life a little bit easier as they just go for back-to-back energy balls, and of course, that's resisted damage from a Shadow. Maybe that would threaten the KO, but from a non-Shadow, it does not, and as a result, we actually win the one-shield scenario with Dragonair, which we shouldn't really be doing. Now, we're going to see a Blastoise in the back. Now, I did see a similar team earlier in the day, and they had a Kanto Ninetales in the back, so I should be in a decent position here. But I'm going to no-shield this. They farm up to a potential Skull Bash, but they bait with a Hydro Cannon. I'm now going to look to shield here, which I think is actually quite surprising. Not sure why I did that, but I'm now going to throw on CMP. Winning CMP, it looks like, with the Shadow Milotic, and Aquatail is going to grab the final shield. At this point, I'm going to look to swap out straight away into Sandaconda, but they go for an undercharge, which is a smart play, but it's not going to be the Ninetales. Instead, it's going to be a Clodsire, and they're on Water Pulse, which is crazy to see. Of course, that is super effective, but Sandaconda, not particularly bulky, but bulky enough to live that. Go for the Mudslap farm down, and that's going to be game over, so the opponent just concedes the match. So, GG's up on there, into the next battle, awful lead matchup for the Shadow Dragonair. We're going to be swapping out straight away into our Shadow Milotic, and the opponent throws immediately, but that's not the best timing because we swap out with one turn behind. They give me a full Waterfall in for free as they throw the charge move. So if you are going to see, well, if you're a 2-turn fast move user and the opponent say swaps into a 3-turn user, you should always go for 6 fast moves first because they're 1 turn behind. That actually ends up being perfect timing. But anyways, we're going to come in with the Dragonair, and we're able to go for a full farm down because they wasted more energy than they needed to by going for the Icy Wind. Now they come back in with the Sandslash. Also, by the way, I think this is going to be a team that Mark Pogo showcased, which was a triple like ice and ground type coverage team, which makes a lot of sense. There's really only Araquanid that completely walls the energy there, so unless you're seeing Araquanid very commonly, you basically have good play into everything. However, we can go for the Wrap, and of course, we are still very weak to the ice typing, but that Sandslash is basically dead. They are not going to be able to live a single fast move from my Sandaconda. I'm basically going to clear my debuffs. Remember, the opponent is still debuffed in their defense. Icy Wind gets the knockout, and if the opponent doesn't clear the debuff, we get the full farm down. So the opponent, if they swapped out there, then I come out with enough energy to reach back-to-back Wraps. So either way, they didn't really have any play there, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we're going to see a Swampert in the lead. They're going to go straight for the charge move, likely going to be a Sludge for coverage. Sludge is going to get me fairly low, and again, they're going to swap out. A lot of Empoleon catching my charge moves on the Dragonair, but this doesn't really matter too much. Yes, unfortunately, this time around, we're not going to swap out and try and make a catch or anything, and because we debuffed them there, we don't really get that much of a farm down, but we can shield once. We're still very healthy, and they come back in with the Swampert. So I do expect to grab a shield here, so I do go for the Wrap bait, Wrap is going to be shielded, and my switch clock is very close to coming up. So at this point, I realize I can shield this, I can bank a Wrap for later, swap out into my Milotic, and their final Pokemon is going to be a Fearow. This is fine with me, of course, all shields are down, but Milotic is going to be able to tank a Drill Peck, and now we can fire off back-to-back Aqua Tails. First one is going to be shielded by the opponent. We can reach the second one. We actually, it looks like we could have just barely reached a Wrap. However, Aqua Tail is going to be enough damage to get the knockout. We can actually Waterfall, farm down the Swampert as well, and I'm able to take that game. Now going into the final battle of this video, I do believe, we're going to see Credilli in the lead, which is fine with me, because of course, I've got two Pokemon weak to the grass typing in the back line. We're going to go for an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail is going to be no shielded, which is quite nice for me, because a second Aqua Tail, even with a debuff, after the Dragon Breath damage, probably will get the knockout. However, I'm going to swap out into Sandaconda, and I may... oh, we nearly got through the whole video without coughing, but I'm able to go for the catch there onto my Sandaconda, where of course Rock Tomb is resisted. Now, unfortunately, they come in with Corviknight, which completely walls my energy, but they make a pretty significant mistake here, which is throwing their energy when they didn't really need to do that. Honestly, they could have gone for an Air Cutter and then committed to a very aggressive farm down, whereas now we can come in, they're debuffed, so I'm going to deal a lot of damage here with these Waterfalls. Aqua Tail's certainly going to be enough damage to get the knockout. Remember, Dragonair does have quite a lot of energy. So we actually swap, we snipe with the Dragonair. That is huge for me. Their final Pokemon, gonna be a Guzzlord, but we've got so much energy. We can reach back-to-back Wraps here. First one grabs the first shield. Honestly, they kind of have to let one of these moves go through. Wrap number 2 does huge damage, drops their defense as well, which means actually I don't even need a third charge move. Instead, we can shield the Brutal Swing. One more Waterfall, gets the farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there, and again, that is going to be another 5-0. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way, you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.